Hi there, my name is Jade Novarino, and I'm here with the Independent Publishing Resource Center doing a little bit of an introduction to italic calligraphy and handwriting, as written here by Lloyd J. Reynolds. I typically work from the models by Jacqueline Savarin. She's written an extensive book. This one's 29 alphabets on handwritten scripts. Her italic is a lovely model to work from. I'm here to talk a little bit about tools you might have lying around the house and how to make your own, and if you already have a nib and you have some ink, how to use those to write with italic. I'm also going to show you how to rule up your own page. So italic is written at a 5 pen widths, which means you take the edge of your pen and you multiply it by 5. You do that by making a nib ladder. So if you don't have a nib like this one, you can also make yourself an edged tool with 2 pencils and some tape. All you have to do is align your pencils so that they're flush with each other and tape them. Now I'm going to show you how to make a nib ladder with your double pencil and your nib. So in order to make 5 double pencil pen widths, you'll do 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So that's going to be the height of your letter forms. Say, for example, that's how tall your base of your letters are going to be. You're going to have some letters that extend above the X height or go below the X height, and those are called ascenders and descenders. I can show you a little bit of those in a moment. With your nib, it's the same trick, though of course it's a smaller tool, so it's going to be less, but you come and make a push stroke, three, 4, and 5, and that's your nib ladder or your X height. This is a handy tool because no matter where you are or what pen you're using, you know the ratio for italic letters. Just know to make 5 pen widths. So now I'll show you how to use your pen width to rule up a page, because that's a very important part of practicing calligraphy. If you don't have a nice page layout, your letters get cramped, it's hard to see them, and one of my teachers always says if you have a nice page layout with ample margins, you can have okay writing, but it's going to look quite nice. So I'll show you that in a moment. So I've cut my nib ladders out. That's because it's going to be more accurate than if I were to use a ruler to measure them, and I'll show you why. You want to give yourself ample margins. For a piece of paper this size, which is 11 by 17, I give myself 1.5 margins on the side, a 1-inch margin on the top, and around a 2-inch margin on the bottom. Given that I have a T-square, I'm going to then take my T-square and measure out my mark out my margins. If you don't have a T-square, something that you can do is just mark an inch for the top alongside the top several times, and then use your ruler to connect those lines. Do the same for the side margins. Same for the bottom. And 1.5 on the side again. Now you have your margins laid out for your practice page, and you are not to write in the margins. Next, you take your cutout nib ladder and you make tick marks along the side of your margin. And you continue to do that all the way until you get to the bottom. Again, if you're going the ruler route, you'll want to do it in the center as well, so that you have something to line up the left side with the right side. And finally, you'll want to make those dots on the right side as well. So let me demonstrate making one line. And you go like that all the way down the page until you've gotten to the bottom. As you can see, I have my page rolled up, and now I'm going to show you a bit about how to use these tools. Take your nib with the gold side pointing upwards and the reservoir pointing downwards, and tap it into your ink well. I also like to shake off excess ink. As you'll see, sometimes the ink pools up and makes it difficult to write. So the thing that makes this tool different than most of our everyday pens and pencils that we're used to, like this Bic pen, for example, you see if I go up, it's thin. If I go down with it, it's thin. This is a monoline tool. However, this nib is not a monoline tool. So when you go up, it's going to give you a thin stroke, and when you go down, it's going to give you a thick stroke. That's what's going to give your letter forms variance and body and structure. Italic is written at a 45-degree angle, which is conveniently half of 90, which is conveniently at the edge of your guidelines at all times. So if you need to check against your angle, you can always go back to anything that has a right angle, go into the center of it, and align your pen. Sometimes you might be writing here or sometimes here. Those are not 45-degree angles, so you just want to check against your angle to see where you've been holding your pen. At a 45-degree angle, go up thin and come down thick. As you do this, inhale on the upstroke, exhale on the downstroke. This is a wonderful warm-up and exercise for establishing your angle and establishing your concentration. Do this exercise across the entire first line of your writing. And when you're through, give it a look. Is there anywhere where your angle varied, or where you wrote too quickly, or where your ink pooled up? Notice these things. Notice if the space between your peaks and peaks is equal or greater or lesser skip a line entirely and do the same exercise, except for this time not so rigid and with more fluidity here. Thick and thin, thin, thick. Peaks and valleys all the way across your second writing line. Keeping a consistent 45-degree angle. It's nice to align the rhythm of your breath with your upstrokes and your downstrokes. It also gives you a rhythm of writing. It forces you to slow down and pay attention a little bit more. That being said, once you've warmed up, I'm going to show you a little bit of introductory strokes that will be important for your study of Italic. At a 45-degree angle, come down thick and exit thin, enter thin, down thick, exit thin. Make this shape all the way across your page, and try to note the space in between, your counter space. Try to make it equidistant. Try to notice where your letter is slanting, in what direction, how far over. Is it slanting to the left, to the right? Is it very upright? Did I maintain equal amounts of space between each form? Once you have a shape like this down, you definitely are ready to dive into writing the letter N, which takes up the X height of the italic script. Unlike the letter H, which goes above the X height or the waistline with its ascender, which is an additional 5 pen widths tall. It's going to be similar, but in the other direction with your letter Y. It's going to descend past the baseline. Something to note with all of these shapes is the counter space. What are the shapes that the absence of ink are leaving behind? What do those shapes look like? in the crevices of the N, the H, and the Y, we see a triangle. We also see this arch shape. Notice the width of your letters as you're writing along. The interior space should be about 2.5 pen widths wide for the letter N, for example. More of this type of information is available in Jacqueline Savarin's models for Italic. This, again, is just an introduction to get you familiar with your tool, the shapes, the angle, and the guidelines. I'm going to do a little demoing with the double pencil for folks who don't have a nib. So as I was saying earlier, your double pencil is going to mimic the thick and thin lines that the edged pen is able to produce, but it is going to do so with an absence that makes up the letter. You'll see that in a second. So I'm making a little bit of a nib ladder here so I can determine where to write within. No. So again, you want to rule up at 5 pen widths. You can do that by making your nib ladder, determining the space, and ruling up a page. You also want it to hold your tool at a 45-degree pen angle. So there's my angler. And I'm going to go up, thin, and down thick. Up, thin, and down thick. This is a larger tool than the nib, so more range of motion is going to be necessary. You're going to probably be using more of your elbow than if you were writing with your C2 nib. So be mindful of that your body is a tool in this practice as well. You know you're holding your pencils at a consistent angle when they line up on the thick stroke, they line up on the thin stroke. So here they're lining up. When your pencil strokes aren't lining up, that means that you're holding your pencils at disparate angles. So right here, they've created a bit of a dimensional shape instead of acted as one tool, giving you a thin stroke that doesn't have both pencils visible. So again, if your pencils are at the right angle consistently, the correct one rather, they're going to show up as a thin stroke with one mark as opposed to two, like right here. So that's something to take notice of. Something else to take notice of is, even though it is a large use of paper, you do want to give yourself ample room when you're practicing. I'll show you what I mean. So I'm going to practice on my writing line, which I've marked here with the X symbol. I'm paying attention to my breath. I'm paying attention to my stroke order, my pen edge angle. I'm taking note that my letters actually touch the top and bottom of my writing line, and that my descenders hit my descender line, my ascenders Get my ascender line starting at the top, coming down. See, I diverted a bit here from my angle. It's okay, it's just important to notice when we do those things in our practice. Don't obsess over them, that they stunt you as well. I'm trying to pay attention to how much space I put between my individual letters. I'm kind of in a tight spot right here. I didn't really give my two curved shapes a lot of room to be near each other. However, I'm noticing that this looks like a nice amount of room, as does this, because it's equal. They got a little close here, but just things to notice. So I've written the word neighbor, I've got my descenders, and now I'm going to skip an entire line, and I'm going to come down to my new writing line. And that's so that our letters have enough space to be. That way, my ascender isn't going to interact or cross that descender, and they're going to have enough space to exist where they're not bumping into each other and creating visual clutter. Arguably, this also might not even be enough interlinear space because I'm very close to that descender. So something to consider is playing with that and measuring those spaces out so you can figure where your letters are going to land with intention. But that's just something I wanted to. As I mentioned, written letters by Jacqueline Savarin is what I use for the most part when I'm trying my hand at a different script. She also has really reliable italic models. Also, Lloyd J. Reynolds' Little Red Book about italic is a wonderful text, and he also filmed some episodes on public television, and they're available on YouTube. He goes through the alphabet, he explains paleography, and it's quite charming and quite lovely to see the way his pen dances across the page. He also has a great hand and a good model for italic. It's really important to trust your model, learn about your teachers, and use a model as much as you can. Always have one right next to you when you're practicing. Okay, thank you so much. Perhaps you'll join us in our virtual Scribe-in at the IPRC on Mondays from 2 to 4. Thank you.